Imagine you're walking through a forest, the air is still, the birds have gone quiet, and then you see it, an old elephant standing alone, far away from its herd. It isn't eating, it isn't moving. It's just standing there, swaying gently, like it knows something you don't. You watch it for a while, and something about the scene makes your chest feel heavy. You can't explain it. But somehow, in that moment, you feel like you're witnessing something sacred, something private, something that was never meant for human eyes. And here's the question that stays with you long after you've walked away. Did that elephant know it was dying? That question sounds almost too human to ask about an animal. We like to think that awareness of death is something unique to us, something that separates humans from every other creature on this planet. But what if we're wrong? What if animals don't just experience death? What if some of them actually sense it coming? Today, we're going to explore one of the most quietly profound questions in all of animal science. What do animals do when they know they are dying? And what their behavior reveals might change the way you think about life, consciousness, and what it means to feel. Let's start with something that researchers have observed again and again across dozens of species: the act of withdrawal. When many animals sense that death is approaching, their first instinct is to separate themselves from the group. Dogs do it, cats do it, elephants do it, even some birds do it. They move away quietly, they find a hidden place, they become still. For a long time, scientists believed this was purely instinctual, a survival mechanism left over from millions of years of evolution. A sick or dying animal that stays with the herd becomes a liability. It slows others down, it attracts predators, so the logic made sense. Leave before you become a danger to the ones you love. But here's where it gets more interesting than that simple explanation suggests. Because withdrawal isn't random, it isn't panicked, and it isn't always about protecting the group. In many observed cases, the dying animal chooses a specific place, a meaningful place, a place it has visited before, a place connected to memory, comfort, or familiarity. And that kind of intentional behavior suggests something that goes far beyond basic survival programming. Let's talk about elephants, because if there is one animal on Earth whose relationship with death will genuinely stop you in your tracks, it's the elephant. Elephants are among the very few animals that have been scientifically documented responding to the bones and remains of their own dead. When an elephant herd comes across the skeleton of another elephant, even one that died years earlier, they don't ignore it. They stop. They gather around it. They touch the bones gently with their trunks. They examine the skull. And sometimes they stand there in silence for a very long time. Researchers have watched matriarch elephants lead their herds directly to the spot where a family member died, even years after the death occurred. The herd will return to that place. They will stand in what can only be described as a vigil. Now, scientists are careful with the word grief. They don't like to apply human emotional labels to animal behavior without extensive evidence. But here's what they do say. Elephants show measurable behavioral changes in response to death. Their movements slow, their vocalizations change. They stay near the body or the remains far longer than any survival logic would require. And when an elephant itself is dying, its herd often stays with it. They don't flee. They don't abandon it. They surround it. They touch it. They make low rumbling sounds that haven't been fully decoded, but seem by every observation to carry a kind of meaning. What does this tell us? It tells us that at least some animals have a relationship with death that isn't purely mechanical. Something in their nervous system, their memory, their social architecture, something registers loss, something responds to it. But here's where it gets even stranger. There are animals that seem to sense death before it visibly arrives. Not their own death, someone else's. Cats have become almost legendary for this. There are well-documented accounts, including one widely reported case from a nursing facility in the United States, where a cat named Oscar would quietly enter the rooms of patients who were within hours of dying. He would curl up beside them. Nurses began using his behavior as a kind of signal. When Oscar sat with a patient, the medical team knew to contact the family. Oscar didn't do this for every patient. He wasn't a particularly social cat. He didn't seek out attention or affection in most of his daily interactions. But when someone was about to die, he was there, consistently. Over years of observation, how? The most widely accepted explanation involves scent. The human body, as it begins to shut down, releases specific chemical compounds. Ketones are produced as cells begin to break down. Certain metabolic changes create subtle but detectable shifts in how a body smells. Cats, with their extraordinary olfactory sensitivity, may be able to detect these shifts long before any visual or behavioral signs appear. In other words, Oscar wasn't mystical. He was just paying attention to a frequency that human beings can't access. And this points to something deeply important about the animal mind. Animals perceive the world in ways we are only beginning to understand. The spectrum of their sensory experience extends far beyond ours. And somewhere in that expanded perception may lie an awareness of death that we have no framework to fully comprehend. Dogs show something similar, though often expressed differently. There are thousands of reported cases of dogs behaving strangely in the hours before their owner's death. They become clingy. They refuse to leave a certain room. They whine at seemingly nothing. They position themselves at the door of a dying person's bedroom and won't move. And then there are the dogs who visit graves. Dogs have been documented returning to the burial sites of their owners long after the death, in some cases crossing significant distances to reach a spot they seem drawn to by something invisible. Hachiko, the famous Akita from Japan, waited at the train station where his owner used to arrive from work every day, for 9 years after the man's death. 9 years. Is that grief? Is it loyalty? Is it hope? Science doesn't have a clean answer. But whatever it is something. Something that resists our urge to dismiss it as simple conditioning or habit. Let's shift now to something even more intimate. What animals do with their own dying. Birds are fascinating in this context because they are so rarely seen dying by human beings. You see birds everywhere in your garden, on power lines, at the water's edge. But how often do you find a bird that has simply died of old age? Almost never. This is not a coincidence. Birds instinctively hide when they are unwell or dying. They find enclosed spaces, dense bushes, hollow trees, sheltered ledges. They tuck themselves away from the world. Part of this is protective, a way to avoid attracting predators in a moment of vulnerability. But the behavior is so consistent, so deliberate, that it also carries the quality of privacy, of something chosen. Whales present one of the most dramatic and mysterious dying behaviors of any animal on Earth. Whale strandings, where whales beach themselves on shore, have puzzled scientists for centuries. Some strandings are explained by illness, disorientation, sonar disruption. But in certain documented cases, no clear external cause is found. The whale simply came to the shore. There is a particularly striking pattern observed in some species where a whole pod will follow a dying or disoriented whale toward shallow water. They don't flee, they follow. They stay together even when staying means danger for the healthy members of the group. The instinct that drives this, to stay with the one who is dying, to follow rather than abandon, is not what pure survival logic would predict, and yet it happens, repeatedly, across species, across oceans. Now here's a question worth sitting with. If animals don't have the same cognitive awareness of death that humans do, why does so much of their behavior around death look like what we would do? Why do they return to meaningful places? Why do they stay with the dying? Why do they slow down, grow quiet, become still? Why do they sometimes seem to mourn? The answer may lie in something deeper than conscious thought. It may live in the body itself. Science has shown us that mammals share core neurological structures with human beings. The limbic system, the part of the brain associated with emotion, memory, and social bonding, exists across a wide range of species. It's older than language, older than abstract thought. It evolved in a time before any creature could sit down and contemplate what death means in a philosophical sense. But it didn't need to understand death to feel the loss of safety, the absence of a familiar presence, the disruption of a bond. And it's possible that what we are witnessing when animals gather around the dying, when they return to places of loss, when they withdraw to find stillness, it's possible we are watching the limbic system doing exactly what it was built to do. Feel, respond, connect. That means the roots of what we call grief may be older than we ever imagined. Not uniquely human, not invented by consciousness or language or culture, but ancient, biological, written into the structure of beings long before we arrived to give it a name. There's one more behavior worth talking about, and it might be the most quietly moving of all. In certain species, when an individual is dying, something shifts in the dynamic of the group. Dominance hierarchies soften. Competition pauses. Other members have been observed staying physically close to a dying companion, grooming them, vocalizing toward them, simply being present. Chimpanzees have been filmed sitting beside dying elder members of their group, touching them gently, refusing to leave even after death. A mother chimpanzee famously carried the body of her infant for weeks after the baby died, holding it, grooming it, treating it as though presence alone could bridge the gap between life and what comes after. Dolphins have been seen supporting dying companions at the surface of the water, preventing them from sinking. They will do this for hours, even when it becomes physically exhausting, even when there is no visible hope of recovery. What these behaviors share is a quality that is almost impossible to name without using human language. Call it tenderness, call it loyalty, call it love. Whatever word you reach for, the behavior beneath it is real, observable, documented, and deeply, unexpectedly moving. So what does all of this mean for us? Here's the reframe that I want to leave you with. We have spent centuries placing ourselves at the top of a hierarchy of consciousness. We are the ones who know we will die. We are the ones who build meaning around mortality. We are the ones who grieve, who mourn, who create rituals of remembrance. But the animals have been doing something very similar for longer than recorded history. Without language, without ceremony, without ever being able to explain what they feel. And maybe that's the most important part. Maybe the fact that these behaviors exist without explanation, without philosophy, without religion, without words, tells us that what we are really looking at is something primal, something that doesn't need thought to exist, something that is woven into life itself. The elephant standing at the bones of its family member isn't doing it because it understands death. It's doing it because something in its ancient knowing body recognizes loss and responds to it. The dog that won't leave its owner's side in the final hours isn't doing it out of obligation. It's doing it because the bond is real, because the presence matters, because in whatever way that creature experiences the world, this moment registers as significant. The cat that comes quietly and curls up beside the dying isn't offering theology or comfort in any conscious sense, but it is offering something: warmth, nearness, the simple radical act of not looking away. And maybe that's what all of us, human and animal alike, are really doing when we face the end of something. We're not solving it. We're not explaining it. We're just staying. We're just being present for something larger than ourselves. That old elephant you imagined at the beginning of this video, standing alone in the forest, swaying gently in the silence, maybe it wasn't afraid. Maybe it had simply done what so many creatures before it had done, found its place, grown still, and waited with a kind of grace that doesn't need a name. There's something in that worth thinking about. Something worth carrying with you. If this video made you see the animal world, or even your own life, a little differently, I'd love to know what you're thinking. Drop it in the comments. What moment in this video stayed with you the most? And if you're someone who finds yourself drawn to questions like this, questions about life, consciousness, emotion, and what connects us to the living world around us, then this channel is going to keep giving you exactly that. Subscribe if you haven't yet. There's a lot more to explore together,